In the previous episode, Jean attempted to hypnotize Jia by chanting and swinging a coin in front of her eyes. He continued, now watch this coin very closely, from this moment on, you are. However, Jean abruptly stopped, realizing he had skipped a step that should have been done before Jia fell asleep. Undeterred, he searched for another method to achieve his goal. Despite Jin's eccentric behavior, Jia couldn't help but be curious about what he would do if she actually fell asleep. Jean tried various methods to induce sleep, and Jia, with a mix of tolerance and amusement, pretended to snore and feign deep sleep. Finally, Jean felt a sense of relief as he believed his trick had worked. In a slow, deliberate tone, he said, Jia, you will fall into a deep slumber. You have a secret that you keep close to yourself, a past that you struggle to discuss with others. After I count to 3, you will come face to face with your past self from that time. Jia realized that Jean cared about her past and must have been eager to know. Despite the quirky spectacle he had prepared, she couldn't help but appreciate the effort he put into creating a dialogue that wouldn't hurt them. Determined to provide the answers Jean sought, Jia decided to open up about her past. Jean urgently asked her, Jia, what do you see in front of you? In her mind, she screamed, nothing. But unwilling to shatter Jin's heart, she chose to merely murmur a few words. Suddenly, Jean declared, you will see nothing because the truth is that nothing happened. You have no uncomfortable secrets or any past that you are afraid to discuss because you didn't do anything wrong. So, you will remember none of it, and you will see nothing. I believe in you, I will believe in you until the end, no matter how, no matter what. So, now after I count to 3, you will have no memory of this. It was a very distant memory. In that memory, Jia had done something wrong and was being punished for it. Truthfully, she hadn't done anything wrong, but nobody believed her. They pinned it on her. Already marked as a troublemaker, even if she tried to defend herself, nobody would believe her, nobody but just one person, Jean Minqiu, who took everything on himself to save her. When Jia awoke, she found herself in her bed. She couldn't recall when she fell asleep or how she ended up in her bedroom. It felt as if she had truly been hypnotized. Meanwhile, Jean was sleeping in his bedroom when he suddenly woke up and glanced behind him. There was Jia, who had come in and laid down on his bed. Jia hugged him and softly asked, what happened? Did I wake you up? Jean asked, Jia. What are you doing here? Jia blushed and cutely said, I had a dream, a wee sky dream. Jean couldn't believe what in the world Jia was doing. Jia also felt embarrassed after acting like that. But Jean said to her, is that so? Then good night, Jia. Jia annoyingly shouted, hey, Jean Minqiu, what was that reaction just now? Oh no, little baby, you had a scary dream, is what you should say at the very least. To Jia's surprise immediately, Jean with glittery eyes said, oh, our little baby, did you have a bad dream? Jia instantly regretted her decision in making Jean say those cheesy words. Jean instantly said, Jia, should I lend you my back? Well, I heard from somewhere that another person's body temperature can help with anxiety. I get the feeling that you are anxious about something, so I thought it'd help if we lay down back to back. Jia smiled hearing that and laid down hugging Jean and said, I think I am calming down a bit by sleeping like this. Jean replied, oh really, that's good to hear. Jia suddenly said, Minqiu, the thing is, she suddenly ticked him on the back and started laughing. Then she continued, so are you really fine with leaving it like that? Don't you want to ask me anything else? Aren't you curious whether I am hiding something? Jean tried to be clueless and said, I am not sure what do you mean. Jia irritatingly said, don't you remember? You did a bunch of weird stuff to me earlier. Jean got up and said, weird stuff, hypnosis, maybe you just dreamt it. Jia said, oh really, but I never said anything about hypnosis. Jean took a slight pause and continued, I am fine with it, Jia. The thing is, I think that you have already told me everything there is to be said. Even if there's something you are still hiding, I believe that you'll tell me about it eventually. Jia, I know there are some things people prefer to keep to themselves, but more importantly, you are someone who thinks of others before herself. Since the Han Jia I know is that type of person. Jia immediately embraced Jean from behind, hearing that, and said, you have got quite the silver tongue today. Come here, let me give you a reward. Let this big sister give you a kiss. Jean tried to escape from Jia's grip, but Jia held him tightly, saying, oh, my dear little Minqiu, don't be shy. You must have been looking forward to this yourself. Let your big sister do all the work. Suddenly, Jia's expression changed, and she went into silent mode. Because when Jia was hugging Jean, she felt she just touched the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Jean tried his best to explain the situation, but he couldn't come up with any excuses to cover it up. There was a brief silence for quite a while. When suddenly, Jia came closer to Jean, touched her back to his back, slowly put her hand on his hand, and in the shining moonlight, they kissed each other. After a while, they stopped, and Jia looked at Jean with a blush on her face. She slowly slid her hands through Jin's hair. Jean put his hands on her cheeks, and Jia felt so relieved by his gesture. Suddenly, Jia felt Jin's heart beating and said, Minqiu, your heart is beating so fast. Are you nervous? Jean nervously agreed with her and said, Jia, your hands feel pretty cold. Are you nervous too? Jia burst her bubble, saying, sorry to disappoint you, but my hands are always this cold. Jia started teasing Jean, Minchiol, your face is too hot. If I cracked an egg on your face, it would get cooked instantly. She just couldn't fathom the situation and continued, it doesn't seem fair. If you think about it, the one who brought up the idea of marriage was me. I also dragged you out on dates and other stuff. The one who brings things up and even coming to your room like this, it's all on my initiative. It's like I am being impatient. Sometimes I wish you'd. Suddenly, she halted in the middle, saying, I am talking crazy. What am I even saying? I'll go, sorry for waking you up. I am also sorry for entering unannounced. Well, since you did that weird hypnosis stuff earlier, let's call it even. Suddenly, Jean stopped Jia and said, who says you can go? He immediately picked her up, and Jia's voice echoed, hey, why are you biting? Jean softly said, I wasn't biting you, I was just nibbling. Jia shouted, what? Just where did you learn this from? Jean started nibbling her again, and Jia tried to stop him. But he suddenly pushed her onto the bed. And Jia finally realized, that's how it was, the one holding back wasn't just her. Is today the day they will finally cross the line? In this romantic situation, Jean still killed Jia's mood by his clumsiness. Suddenly, he tore his shirt off and said, Han Jia, I won't hold back anymore. Jia asked, wait anymore? You mean you have been holding back until now? Surprisingly, Jean agreed with her. Jia was still confused and urgently asked, wait, since when were you holding back? Jean dismissively ignored her question and passionately kissed her. She finally understood that now wasn't the time to be asking these types of questions. In the end, they were still the same kids they were in elementary school. As time passed, they simply became kids who were older and bigger. Kids who yearned to be adults. However, the kids who thought they'd stay kids forever shared a clumsy yet profoundly adult exchange. And that night was ever so. Suddenly, Jia woke up shouting, never. For a while, Jia thought she had just had a dream. But when she saw Jean sleeping beside her, she understood it wasn't just a dream. When she looked at her phone, she started shouting, 8:30, Minchiol, we need to get ready, it's 8:30. Ugh, we are already running late, why didn't the alarm wake me up? While Jia was hastily getting up, suddenly a voice came from behind her, and she realized her back failed her. Jean was going to console Jia, but suddenly he halted and tightly hugged her from behind, whispering, the weather's so nice today, how about taking a break? Jia was so bewildered by his actions that she urgently asked, what? Jean said, I am saying let's skip work and take a break today at home. At the tender age of 5, it was around that time when Jia first crossed paths with Jean. Back then, Jean became utterly perplexed, wondering if Jia was perhaps experiencing a lag or some kind of delay in her thoughts. Attempting to snap her out of her reverie, he contemplated that a kiss might do the trick. However, as he approached her, Jia abruptly bumped into him, scolding, hey, what the hell are you doing? If you have time to kid around, then you have time to get ready for, yet again, Jia's back betrayed her. Consequently, Jia sought leave from the cafe, prompting Yanzhou to inquire extensively about the reason behind her absence. In response, Jia resorted to claiming it was a sick leave. Concerned, Yanzhou delved into a barrage of questions about Jia's well-being. Unconvinced by Jia's explanation, Yanzhou initiated a video call. In the conversation, Jia mentioned having a headache and some back pain. Yanzhou, still not satisfied, began speculating her own answers, suggesting scenarios like washing blankets, sick leave, back pain, and even the possibility of a newly married status. Hastily realizing her error, Yanzhou apologized and promised to inform others while urging Jia to get some rest. Jia attempted to clarify, but Yanzhou abruptly ended the call. After the phone call, Jia attempted to soothe herself by rationalizing that it was expected of a married couple, and there was nothing to be embarrassed about. However, the memories of the previous night left her feeling utterly embarrassed and flustered. Memories could indeed be bothersome. The human brain, incapable of accepting pessimism, tended to fixate on what it was told not to think about. Jia found herself contemplating these peculiar aspects of human psychology. In her confusion, Jia recalled a similar situation and decided that with a bit more time, her memories would naturally fade away. To convey her need for space, she left a note for Jean, emphatically stating, do not look for me. Upon reading the note, Jean immediately assumed that Jia had once again run away from home. However, Jia's voice echoed from her room, clarifying, I didn't run from home. I wrote that note because I just needed a little time. Remember the third line in our agreement, the one about not being allowed to enter the room of the opposing party without permission. So just give me a couple of days to calm down a bit. Honestly, I didn't know it would turn out like this, but I just felt flustered and embarrassed. So just give me a couple of days. Suddenly, Jean interrupted, fifth line of the agreement, and pushed open the door, causing Jia to fly and fall on the floor. With a mischievous smile, he continued, if there are any issues, they are to be discussed. Remember it? Jia was in sheer disbelief and asked, how did you? I locked it, I am sure I locked that door just now. Jean boldly showed her the key and said, I opened it with this. Jia, now even more irritated, continued, hey, you know that's violating our agreement, right? Jean, unfazed, started dragging her, stating, it only says that I can't enter as I please, it never says anything about me not being allowed to enter using a key. Jia, fueled by frustration, started yelling and arguing with him. But Jean, with a mischievous smile, taunted, what would you do about it if I did enter? Are you gonna scribble Jia's property on me again? Jia, utterly flustered, exclaimed, what? Why do you still remember it? It was just meant to be a childish prank, a frivolous act by primary schoolers. But reflecting on that childish prank now, it's more than a little embarrassing. What on earth possessed Jia's younger self to scribble Jia's property onto Jean? Nervously, Jean said, since I crossed the line today, could I be yours again? Jia, overcome with embarrassment, irritatingly poked Jean, hey, how can you say stuff like that? Aren't you embarrassed? Marriage is quite an amazing thing, like mint chocolate and a flower bouquet. Things that the Minchiol of the past would never have so much as touched. Working out and not smoking, things that the Jia of the past would never have attempted. Things that they never imagined entering their lives have become so normal. Jia was in confusion, wondering why Minchiol called her out and remained silent for an hour. Frustrated, she said, hey, Minchiol, is there anything you wanted to say? If there's nothing, I was thinking I'd head back and clean my room. Jean nervously replied, the truth is, this movie premiered yesterday, so I was wondering if we could go watch it when you have time. Jia said, oh, then I am free on the weekend, that might work. In her mind, Jia was irritated with Jean, questioning why he didn't say anything for a whole hour if he just wanted to watch a movie. Jia decided it couldn't be helped, she had to do some plus 19 acts. And if you're wondering what plus 19 means, it's nothing weird, it just means being cautious when driving above speeds of 19 kilometers per hour. Jia was going crazy. After what happened last night, all she could think about was just madness. Suddenly, Jean said, Han Jia, I like you. I brought you out here because I wanted to tell you that. Jia got so flustered listening to that. Jean continued, I am not going to apologize since you told me several times not to. So, I like you. Jia thought for a moment and firmly said, then prove it. Jin's heartbeat intensified hearing that. But after saying that, in her mind, Jia was utterly perplexed, questioning what in the world did she just say. Jean suddenly declared, Han Jia, could you close your eyes for me? Jia amusingly shouted, my eyes you say. They are closed. When Jia closed her eyes, a plethora of thoughts bombarded her mind, wondering if Jean was going to kiss her or enact something else. But when she felt something and slowly opened her eyes, she was astonished to find a wedding ring on her finger. Jia asked, what's this all of a sudden? Jean replied, it was you who initiated them, the dates, and the talk of marriage. So I thought maybe I should initiate it this time. He paused for a second, firmly held Jia's hand, and asked, will you marry me? Jia looked at the ring and was utterly perplexed. So she nervously asked, what is that supposed to mean? We're already married, aren't we? Jean said, do you really not understand what I am getting at here? I like you, Han Jia. Will you marry me? Jia's face was drenched with sweat. She understood what Jean meant before he even finished the sentence. What Jean wanted to tell her was unlike the fake marriage they agreed to, they should really get married. But Jia still irritatingly yelled at him, wait a second, Jean Minchiol, don't you think this is all a bit sudden? The timing and the current mood are kind of not the best for you to say something like this. Jean, with a straight face, said, really? Alright then, just pretend I didn't say anything, so, can I get the ring back? Jia shouted, no, that's not what I mean. She took a deep breath and continued, why me? Why me of all people? You, of all people, know that I am stubborn and have a rough personality. I am the type of person who runs away from my problems. Jean immediately said, I realize that you are the one for me. Truth is, I had liked you since we were kids. I regret not being able to tell you then, so I won't regret it a second time. Since this time, I am not letting you go. So, will you marry me, Jia? Jia suddenly found herself recalling how quickly her heart beat when she first heard Jin's confession. His hands, as he spoke, felt so reassuring. It felt like Jin's gaze was burning into her, looking at her without a hint of hesitation in his eyes. To Jean, who accepted her cowardly self, Jia bowed down and said, then I'll be in your care. Jean confusingly asked, why are you prostrating yourself all of a sudden? Jia shouted, Dunno, don't ask. I don't know what the hell I am supposed to do right now. So no asking, alright, you better not go back on your word after all this. Like if you change your mind while filling out forms. Jean immediately said, I could say the same to you. Jia suddenly got shocked and asked, what are you doing? Jean, doing a headstand, continued, I am currently prostrating myself in the most respectful position I know of. Finally, Jean and Jia wore their wedding rings. Jia, with a radiant smile on her face, emphatically said, I wonder why this still feels so embarrassing after all the other stuff we did. Jean, feigning ignorance and teasingly remarked, all the other stuff we did. What could you mean by that? Jia fell into a brief silence and then continued with intensified emotion, really, you don't know, are you seriously lying straight off the bat? Jean, in response, executed another headstand, saying, I am so sorry. Jia, visibly irritated by his antics, sternly instructed him to sit properly. After Jean complied, she deliberately uttered, well, if you don't remember, then how about we do it again? Is that what you wanted to hear, Jean Minchiol, you little hee-hee-hee? Jean immediately stood up, declaring, right on the mark, I'll go and take a shower. This is Han Jia, 32 years old, currently working as the manager of Cafe Second. And today, she got married, with the one who was and still is her friend. How? She herself is not so sure, but she is absolutely certain of one thing, the fact that her real marriage life starts now. And that's how part 1 of season 1 of Match Made in Heaven concludes. So please eagerly anticipate the second season. And subscribe for more captivating stories like this.